The night had truly swallowed the last glimmer of twilight, hadn't it? A thick, inky cloak drawn close over the forest, now weeping gentle, persistent rain against the window panes, each bead a tiny, glistening sphere catching the lantern light. We're safe now, gathered here, the crackle and hiss of the hearth a welcome counterpoint to the distant whisper of the wind weaving through the ancient pines, a sound that always seems to carry whispers of forgotten things. Steam rises from damp cloaks drying by the fire, mingling with the rich, earthy scent of wood smoke and damp earth, a comfort after the long journey through paths now slick with the forest's tears. Pull your chairs closer if you would. Let the warmth seep into your bones. Chase away the chill of the darkening world outside, for it is in such moments, with the veil between worlds feeling thin, that the oldest tales truly stir, eager to be recounted. We honor these deep woods, don't we, and all that dwells within their shadowed depths, those secrets held close by gnarled roots and whispered through rustling leaves. Tonight, we'll delve into one such story, a tale that has haunted the Slavic imagination for centuries, of a figure both ancient and terrifying, yet inextricably linked to the very essence of wilderness and the enigmatic power of womanhood. If these stories stir something within ya, perhaps a primal echo from the past, consider subscribing to our journey into the heart of folklore. It's how we keep these forgotten embers glowing. This isn't a quick fireside anecdote, you see, but a journey into the pre-Christian shadows, where the lines between nature, magic, and the human spirit blurred into a potent primal energy, a power personified, many say, by an old woman dwelling in a crooked hut that walks on chicken legs, a vision both absurd and utterly chilling. We'll speak of Baba Yaga, yes, but also of the respect due to the forest itself, a living entity that gave birth to her legend and continues to guard its secrets with a stern, unyielding hand. So let the rain drum its timeless rhythm, let the fire cast its flickering dancing shadows. Our tale begins, told with the care and reverence it demands. For some stories are best approached with a hushed breath and an open but wary heart. Before the whispering of the wind was ever written into verse, before the first iron tools carved their mark into the ancient oaks, there stretched a time, a deep, unrecorded epoch, when the very air across these Slavic lands thrummed with something profound, something wild and utterly untamed. It was a time when the vast dark forests weren't merely trees and shadows, but living, breathing entities teeming with unseen powers, with spirits both benevolent and terrifying. Think of it, if you will, the dense, impenetrable canopy stretching for countless miles, a world unto itself, where human footsteps were rare, tentative intrusions, and where the rustling of leaves or the snap of a twig could signify far more than just a passing breeze or a startled deer. Our ancestors, those who lived long before the cross came to these parts, didn't merely observe nature, they lived within it as an inseparable part of its intricate, often ruthless design. They understood, with an instinct born of survival and awe, that the forest was a place of immense fertility, a giver of life, but also a realm of profound mystery and danger, where the rules of the human world simply didn't apply. Ethnographers, poring over centuries-old folklore and fragmented historical accounts, often note this pervasive animism, this deep spiritual connection to the land and its potent forces. This reverence, this profound respect, tinged always with a healthy dose of fear for the wild places, for the ancient groves and the gnarled silent guardians of the woods, is where our story truly begins to take root. It's from this primordial soil that figures like Baba Yaga, with her fierce independence and mastery over the natural world, likely first emerged, not as a simple witch in the modern sense, but perhaps as a remnant goddess, a powerful feminine spirit embodying both the nurturing and destructive aspects of untamed nature. If these glimpses into the ancient currents of belief intrigue you, and if you'd like to keep exploring the shadowy corners of folklore with us, please consider subscribing. Your support helps us keep these old tales alive and breathing. She was, in essence, the forest made manifest. Its ancient wisdom, its unpredictable temper, its capacity for both profound cruelty and a strange, wild justice. Her hut, then, wasn't just a dwelling. It was a microcosm of that untamed wilderness, moving with a will of its own, a boundary place between the known world of hearth and home and the boundless, terrifying expanse of the primordial woods. And so, as the ancient whispers guide us deeper into the tangled heart of these old-growth woods, we must speak of the dwelling itself, a place unlike any other, a structure woven from the very fabric of enchantment and dread. Imagine, if you dare, a small, humble hut, seemingly innocuous at first glance, yet it stands not on the rooted earth, not on stones or timbers, but perched precariously, impossibly, upon two great gnarled legs, thick as ancient tree trunks, ending in clawed feet, like those of some colossal primeval bird. These aren't mere stilts, mind you. These are living, moving appendages, capable of shifting the entire wooden structure with a slow, deliberate creak, or, when its mistress commands, of spinning it wildly on its axis, a dizzying dance amidst the shadowed pines. Its windows, dark and deep, often seem less like panes of glass and more like watchful eyes, following the winding, barely discernible forest paths, scrutinizing every leaf that falls, every shadow that lengthens. There's a breath to it, a strange, animate quality that defies all natural law, a testament to the powerful magic that binds it and its inhabitant to the land. The hut of Baba Yaga is not a static home. It is an extension of her will, a movable fortress, a boundary marker that can appear and disappear as suddenly as a wisp of smoke, a perfect reflection of the wild, untamed feminine power she embodies. It's a place of transition, often said to face away from the path until spoken to, a guardian of thresholds, a challenge to those who seek passage into deeper mysteries. This strange sentient dwelling, with its smoky hearthlight hinting at untold secrets within, feels less like a building and more like a creature, a silent, brooding sentinel of the deep woods, whose very existence demands a shiver of respect, or perhaps a silent prayer. If you find yourself drawn to these forgotten corners of folklore where the impossible becomes terrifyingly real, remember to subscribe. It helps us keep these eerie narratives alive for future gatherings. The very air around it hums with an ancient energy, a resonance from a time when the world was raw and primal, and the magic woven into the fabric of creation was palpable, visible to those with eyes to see and hearts brave enough to perceive it. It awaits, ever shifting, ever watchful, a silent, crooked landmark in a forest that holds its breath, knowing that within its timbered walls a formidable, perhaps even primordial power resides. Within that strange timbered dwelling, you see, within the hut that can dance and spin on its chicken legs, resides Baba Yaga herself, a name that whispers through the very oldest tales of these lands, carrying echoes of a time long before the churches stood. She is often depicted as a powerful ancient crone, her form perhaps bent with the weight of centuries, her gaze sharp enough to pierce through shadows and unveil hidden truths. Yet her nature is far more complex than a simple witch of children's stories. Baba Yaga, in truth, is a liminal guardian, a formidable being who stands ever at the threshold between worlds, a living embodiment of the boundaries that define our existence. Think of it, she governs the elusive passage from life into death, the perilous crossing from the fragile order of human civilization into the boundless, untamed wilderness, and even the transformative journey from youthful innocence to the hard-won clarity of wisdom. She is the gatekeeper, the test giver, the one who challenges those brave, or perhaps foolish enough to seek her out in the depths of the forest, demanding a reckoning. Scholars, delving into the intricate tapestries of Slavic folklore and ancient belief systems, often suggest that figures like Baba Yaga are not merely characters, but powerful remnants of pre-Christian deities, matriarchal earth goddesses perhaps, whose immense feminine power and connection to nature were reinterpreted and sometimes demonized as the old ways gave way to new. She represents a primal force, a wild wisdom that cannot be tamed or easily understood, a necessary counterpoint to the more ordered aspects of existence. Her presence, deep in the enchanted woods, is a constant reminder that the world holds mysteries beyond our comprehension, forces that demand respect and careful navigation. The flickering light from her smoky hearth, glimpsed through the dark windows of her moving hut, isn't merely a beacon in the night. It is a symbol of that transformative fire, the crucible in which fear can become understanding, and the unknown can yield profound insight. She watches, she waits, and she presides over the potent, often terrifying magic of change itself. And what of the one who inhabits such an extraordinary shifting abode? The tales passed down through generations around countless hearts like this one often paint a vivid, if fearsome portrait of Baba Yaga herself, a figure whose very appearance speaks of great age and untamed power. Many speak of her as a bony, long-nosed hag, her form gnarled by centuries of living deep within the forest's embrace, a crone whose wisdom is as vast and ancient as the deepest roots of the primordial woods. But perhaps the most striking and indeed unsettling detail is the legend of her iron teeth. Not teeth of flesh and bone, but of cold, hard metal, glinting strangely in the smoky light of her hut, or perhaps in the pale glow of the moon. This detail, whispered through the years, hints at something far older, far more enduring than mere humanity, a connection to the very earth itself, to its minerals and its unyielding strength. It is said she travels through the air not on a broomstick, as some might imagine, but in a giant mortar, propelling herself with a pestle, while with a swift, elegant sweep of a birch broom, she obliterates all traces of her passing. Imagine that, if you will, the rhythmic thud of the pestle, the rustle of the broom, a silent, swirling dance that leaves no footprint, no hint of her ethereal journey through the starry night or the shadowed canopy. Her very presence, even in these old stories, feels like a palpable force of nature, a storm brewing in the distance, the deep, silent strength of an ancient oak, the inexorable flow of a forgotten river. She is a powerful, primal energy given form, a living embodiment of the untamed wilderness and the cycles of life and death, reflecting the potent female power that predates civilization's gentler interpretations. This isn't a witch born of petty curses, you see, but a being woven from the very fabric of the world, a testament to the raw, unbridled spirit of the ancient Slavic lands, a figure who commands respect, even as she inspires a shiver of unease around the warmest of fires. Now, let us turn our gaze from the ancient walk-in hut to a gentler, yet equally poignant corner of our tale, to a small timbered village nestled at the edge of the sprawling woods, where once lived a young girl named Vasilissa. She was, by all accounts, as kind and fair as the first snowdrop of spring, her spirit gentle, her heart pure, a beacon of quiet light in a world that would soon grow shadowed. But, as often happens in these old stories, light is met by darkness. And after the cruel hand of fate took her beloved mother to the silent earth, Vasilissa's life became a burden of heavy chores and heavier hearts. Her father, blinded by grief and perhaps a touch of loneliness, took a new wife, and with her came two step-sisters, whose hearts were as cold and knotted as winter roots, and whose jealousy burned with a constant stinging malice. They saw Vasilissa's natural grace, her unaffected goodness, as a constant rebuke, and so they heaped upon her endless, thankless tasks, hoping to break her spirit, to dim that inner light. Yet, even in the darkest corners of her sorrow, Vasilissa was not entirely alone. Before her mother drew her last breath, she had pressed into Vasilissa's small hands a tiny wooden doll, no bigger than her thumb, and whispered a sacred instruction. My dear child, whenever you are in need, offer this doll a little food and a few kind words, and she will help you. This little doll, a secret companion, became Vasilissa's only solace, her silent confidant. In the quiet of night, when the house was asleep and only the mice stirred, Vasilissa would tend to her doll, offering a crumb of bread, a drop of water, and whispering her woes into its painted face. And in return, the doll, imbued with a touch of magic from Vasilissa's loving mother, would perform the impossible, completing the daunting tasks set by the cruel stepmother and stepsisters, offering comfort and counsel in ways only the deepest love and a touch of the old magic truly can. This quiet bond, this unseen strength, would be the thread that would eventually lead Vasilissa down a path far more perilous than any she could have imagined, into the heart of the very woodlands we've been speaking of, and to the hut that walks. And so, one particularly dark evening, as the autumn winds began to keen their mournful song around the little village, the simmering malice in Vasilissa's stepmother's heart finally boiled over into a cruel, calculated act. The flickering comfort and light of the hearth, the very heart of any home, especially in these cold northern lands, was abruptly, deliberately extinguished, plunging their small cottage into a sudden, unsettling gloom. "Our fire has gone out," the stepmother exclaimed, feigning distress, though her eyes, no doubt, held a glint of cold satisfaction. "And we have no embers, no spark left in the house. One of you must go to Baba Yaga's hut in the deep woods and beg for a new flame." Of course, she didn't mean one of her daughters. It was a task devised specifically for Vasilissa, a poisoned chalice offered with a false smile, an errand designed not for warmth, but for eternal cold. The very thought of venturing into those forbidden ancient woods after sunset, let alone seeking out the infamous crone whose hut walked on chicken legs, was enough to curdle the blood of any sensible soul. It was a journey understood by all as a sentence, a clear and undeniable act of dispatch meant to rid them of the gentle girl forever. The forest, even by day, was a place of shadows and secrets, where the trees stood so thick and tall they seemed to swallow the very light of the sun. By night, it transformed into a labyrinth of rustling whispers, unseen eyes, and the chilling promise of things best left undisturbed. For a young, innocent girl, alone with only the brave, silent counsel of her little magical doll, the task was not merely dangerous, but seemingly impossible. A journey into the maw of the wild, untamed world that many believed would be her absolute undoing. This was the moment, you see, when Vasilissa, guided by cruel necessity and the faint, enduring spark of her mother's magic, was pushed from the realm of childhood woes into the very heart of myth and dread, toward the smoky hearth of the ancient guardian, Baba Yaga herself, a journey that would irrevocably alter her destiny. And so, with a heavy heart but a determined spirit, Vasilissa stepped out of the cold, dark cottage and into the even deeper, more profound darkness of the forbidden woods, the path swallowed by shadows and the growing dread of the unknown. Her only companion, clutched tightly in her hand, was the little wooden doll, her mother's last, most precious gift, a tiny guardian against the encroaching fear. As the ancient trees loomed, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers against the inky sky, and the rustling leaves seemed to whisper secrets she couldn't quite decipher, the chill of the forest began to seep into her bones. But the doll was a comfort beyond measure. Every so often, when the path seemed to vanish, or a particularly unsettling sound echoed through the gloom, Vasilissa would pause, and in a hushed voice, she would offer her little companion a crumb from her meager provisions, whispering her fears and hopes into its painted face. And in return, the doll, imbued with a magic barn of a mother's enduring love, would stir, its tiny voice, perceptible only to Vasilissa, offering quiet, gentle advice. "Don't despair, little mother," the doll might murmur, its voice like the faint rustle of dry leaves. "Keep to the path. Turn to the right at the ancient oak with the twisted branch." Or, "Do not fear the shadow that passes, for it is merely the wind spirit at play." It was a profound blessing, a constant loving presence from beyond the veil, a guiding thread of warmth against the cold, indifferent vastness of the forest. This small magical helper was more than just a toy. It was a potent symbol of her mother's unwavering love and wisdom, a constant reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds and sinister intentions, she was not truly alone. Each whispered counsel, each gentle nudge steered Vasilissa away from unseen perils, from boggy ground and tangled thickets, keeping her steps true on the winding, perilous journey toward the heart of the forest, toward the strange, crooked hut and the formidable Baba Yaga. It was this quiet, unassuming magic, this enduring connection to a love lost but never truly gone, that fortified her spirit and allowed her to brave the creeping anxieties of the deep woods, drawing her ever closer to her destiny. So Vasilissa pressed on, her small footsteps barely disturbing the carpet of fallen leaves as she ventured deeper into the whispering wilds. Each rustle of the dry foliage sounding like a secret being exchanged by unseen presences. The ancient trees, those silent, towering sentinels of the forest, seemed to lean in closer, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Some draped with eerie moss, others bare against the deepening gloom, as if attempting to guide or perhaps ensnare her. Overhead, the canopy was so dense that only slivers of the night sky, dotted with a few timid stars, could pierce through, creating an undulling tapestry of impenetrable shadow and fleeting silvered light on the forest floor. Every snapped twig, every hoot of an owl, every distant howl of a wolf echoed with amplified intensity in the quiet, thick air, each sound a chilling counterpoint to the rapid, fearful thrumming of her own heart within her chest. It was a place where the air itself felt heavy with untold stories, where the scent of damp earth and pine needles was mixed with something wilder, something untamed and ancient. The forest, in its vast, indifferent majesty, was a labyrinth of twisted roots and shadowed glades, each turn promising new mysteries, new dangers. There were clearings that felt unnaturally still, as if holding their breath, and dense thickets that seemed to close in behind her, erasing the path she had just trod. But through it all, she held fast to her tiny doll, drawing strength from its silent presence, a small beacon of resilience against the overwhelming embrace of the primeval woods. She imagined the crooked hut on chicken legs, somewhere out there in the darkness, its smoky hearthlight, though unseen, a distant, terrifying beacon, a destination that promised either salvation or a fate far worse than the cold, dark forest itself. This was the wilderness in its truest, most formidable form, beautiful, terrifying, and utterly indifferent to the small, brave girl who dared to traverse its depths, carrying only a sliver of hope and a mother's last whispered blessing. As Vasilissa pushed deeper into the silent, ancient heart of the forest, guided only by her small doll and the persistent thrum of her own courage, she encountered a series of strange, ethereal visions that marked the very passage of time itself, as if the woods were a living clock. Just as the first faint blush of gray began to paint the eastern sky, chasing away the deepest indigo of night, a lone figure appeared, riding a magnificent white horse, its coat like freshly fallen snow, its bridle shining like frosted silver. This rider, cloaked in robes of purest white, seemed to shimmer with the delicate light of first dawn, utterly silent as he galloped past, a fleeting, almost dreamlike presence that heralded the gentle awakening of the world. Vasilissa watched him vanish into the deepening light, a tremor of awe mingling with her fear. Then, as the sun climbed higher, asserting its golden dominion over the misty canopy, a second, more vibrant figure emerged. This was a horseman astride a fiery red steed, its coat blazing like a forge, its eyes like embers. He was cloaked in robes the color of molten copper, radiating the fierce, life-giving warmth of midday, a powerful, unstoppable force that swept through the glades before fading into the vibrant greens and golds of the noonday forest. He too passed without a word, a silent, powerful manifestation of the sun's zenith. Finally, as the long shadows began to stretch and merge, and the last embers of daylight retreated behind the western peaks, cloaking the forest once more in its impenetrable dark embrace, a third and final rider appeared. This one, astride a horse as black as polished obsidian, was cloaked in robes of deep, starless night, his presence a profound silence that seemed to absorb all other sounds. He was the harbinger of true darkness, the guardian of the nocturnal realm, and as he passed, the forest seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the secrets the night would unveil. These three mysterious horsemen, the white, the red, and the black, were not merely travelers, you see. They were the very spirits of day, sun, and night, powerful ancient beings who moved with the inexorable rhythm of the cosmos, marking the timeless cycle around Baba Yaga's mysterious domain, silent witnesses to the deep, primordial forces that pulsed beneath the earth and above the star-dusted sky. Their passing was a subtle yet profound reminder of the scale of the world Vasilissa had entered, a place where time itself bent to the will of older, greater powers, and where even the simplest journey could become a passage through myth. After what felt like an eternity of shadowed paths and whispering glades, Vasilissa, her heart thrumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs, finally stumbled upon it, the infamous hut looming crookedly amidst the ancient trees. But it was not merely the sight of the hut itself, perched impossibly on its two colossal chicken legs, that stole her breath and chilled her to the bone. It was what surrounded it. A fence, tall and stark against the deepening twilight, enclosed the entire clearing. But this was no ordinary barrier of wood or stone. This fence was crafted entirely from human bones, bleached and brittle, each one a stark white testimonial to those who had, perhaps, failed to pass Baba Yaga's trials. And atop each post, where one might expect a decorative finial, rested a human skull, hollow-eyed and ghastly, but with a terrifying difference. These skulls glowed, not with an inner light, but with an eerie phosphorescent gleam that cast long dancing shadows across the clearing and illuminated the very bones of the fence itself. Each eye socket, a cavernous, empty promise of peril, seemed to fix its unseeing gaze upon Vasilissa, a silent, unsettling welcome to this domain between worlds. The light was not warm like our hearth here, but cold and green-tinged, an otherworldly glow that made the surrounding forest seem even darker, more menacing. It was a clear warning, etched in bone and spectral light, to any who dared approach this dwelling that stood at the very edge of the mundane world, a stark testament to the formidable power of its occupant. This grim perimeter spoke volumes of Baba Yaga's nature, a guardian of the deepest, most dangerous thresholds, a keeper of boundaries where the rules of life and death held a different, more ancient sway. Vasilissa, clutching her small doll tightly, felt the full weight of the forest's ancient magic pressing down upon her, realizing with a shiver that she had truly stepped into a place where legends breathed, and where every bone in that terrible fence told a silent, cautionary tale of those who had sought a flame and found only an eternal chill. As Vasilissa stood transfixed before the fence of glowing skulls, a sudden chilling sound tore through the quiet of the ancient forest, a distant shriek like the cry of a colossal predatory bird, followed by a low, guttural rumble that vibrated through the very ground beneath her feet, growing louder, closer, with terrifying speed. The air itself seemed to crackle, charged with an invisible raw power that set the hairs on her arms on end and made the very shadows dance with an unnerving energy. Then, with a rush of wind and a deafening whoosh, a blur of motion descended from the inky sky, flying low over the skeletal fence, a sight that would forever be etched into the memory of any who witnessed it. There she was, Baba Yaga, her gaunt form hunched within her colossal mortar, propelling herself with powerful strokes at a pestle, while behind her a birch broom swirled, diligently sweeping away any trace of her ethereal passage. She landed with a jarring thud, not gently, but with the weighty impact of an ancient force, her mortar coming to rest with a final, resonant groan. And then she straightened slowly, agonizingly, looming over young Vasilissa, her figure appearing impossibly tall and menacing in the eerie, skull-light glow. Her nose, long and hooked, seemed to pierce the air, her iron teeth glinting in the faint, unsettling luminescence. Her eyes, deep-set and ancient, fixed upon the trembling girl, not with immediate malice, but with a profound, assessing gaze that seemed to penetrate to the very depths of Vasilissa's soul, weighing her worth, testing her resolve. The silence that followed her dramatic arrival was even more profound than the noise, punctuated only by the distant, rhythmic creaking of the hut's chicken legs as it perhaps shifted slightly in acknowledgement of its mistress. Then Baba Yaga's voice, when it finally came, was a dry, rasping question, like the rustle of dry leaves in a forgotten tomb, or stones grinding together under immense pressure. "What brings you here, child?" she demanded, each word a command, a challenge. "What is your purpose, trespassing in my domain?" It was a question that held the weight of centuries, a test of truth, an invitation to a trial that few ever passed. And as the old crone waited for an answer, the entire forest seemed to hold its breath. Then Baba Yaga's voice, when it finally came, was a dry, rasping question, like the rustle of dry leaves in a forgotten tomb, or stones grinding together under immense pressure. "What brings you here, child?" she demanded, each word a command, a challenge. "What is your purpose, trespassing in my domain?" It was a question that held the weight of centuries, a test of truth, an invitation to a trial that few ever passed. And as the old crone waited for an answer, the entire forest seemed to hold its breath. Vasilissa, with a tremulous voice, explained her plight, the extinguished hearth, the cruel stepmother, and the desperate need for a new spark to warm her home. Baba Yaga, listening intently from her perch within the hut, her iron teeth perhaps glinting in the smoky light, seemed to ponder the request for a long, silent moment. She was not a being to grant favors lightly, nor without a test of mettle, for her domain was a crucible where spirits were either forged or broken. Finally, with a rasping sigh that sounded like dry leaves skittering across frozen ground, she spoke. "Very well, child, I will give you fire, but only if you prove yourself worthy. For 3 days you will serve me, and for each day you must complete the tasks I set. Fail, and you shall become just another skull on my fence." The first of these challenges, delivered with a piercing gaze that seemed to strip away all pretense, was deceptively simple in its phrasing. "You must clean this hut from floor to ceiling, every cobweb banished, every speck of dust removed, by the time the sun touches the horizon tomorrow." But one glance around the interior of the hut, a chaotic jumble of ancient artifacts, bones, and unidentifiable clutter, revealed the true impossibility of the demand. It was a lifetime's accumulation of wilderness itself, gathered within those crooked walls. Then came the second edict. you must sort through these immense piles of seeds." And she gestured towards towering heaps of grain, lentils, and every conceivable seed mixed into an indistinguishable mound. As if that weren't enough to daunt the bravest soul, the third and most delicate task was laid bare. And finally, you must separate every tiny poppy seed from the dirt and ash that clings to them, so that not a single grain of earth remains. All of this by morning light, when the white rider would again herald the dawn. The consequence of failure was stark, uncompromising, and chillingly clear. Doom. Vasilissa stood there, her heart sinking with the weight of these impossible labors, knowing that without her mother's blessed doll, she would surely be lost. Should these tales of old spark a yearning from mar such journeys into myth and mystery, remember there is always a place for you by our hearth. Leave a note in the ledger and drop by when the lanterns glow again. These were not mere chores, you see, but ancient trials, you see, designed to test not only a girl's diligence, but her very spirit, her innate connection to the deep, resonant magic of the earth, and her capacity for hope in the face of absolute despair. The smoky hearth, the only source of warmth in that strange, shifting dwelling, seemed to watch her, its embers glowing with a knowing, patient fire. Left alone in the strange, crooked hut, surrounded by the towering, impossible piles of mixed seeds and the chaotic clutter that covered every surface, Vasilissa's heart sank like a stone in a deep, cold well. The enormity of the tasks laid before her, a mountain of labor that stretched far beyond any human capacity, threatened to swallow her courage whole. And for a fleeting moment, a wave of utter despair washed over her. Tears, hot and stinging, pricked at her eyes. She was just a girl after all, and these were the impossible demands of an ancient, terrifying entity. But then, as the last of Baba Yaga's powerful presence receded into the forest's embrace, Vasilissa remembered her mother's whispered words and the small wooden doll clutched in her hand. With trembling fingers, she pulled it from her pocket, her last, best hope in this dire predicament. As her mother had instructed, she offered the doll a few plums of bread and a sip of water, whispering her overwhelming fears and the crushing burden of Baba Yaga's impossible demands into its tiny painted ear. Then, in an act of profound trust and desperation, Vasilissa pricked her finger, offering a single vital drop of her own blood to the little wooden figure. It was a potent offering, a mingling of life force with the simple wood, stirring the ancient magic that lay dormant within. And then, as if by a silent, unseen command, the doll came to life, not with grand gestures or dazzling flashes of light, but with a quiet, purposeful energy that filled the hut. It began its silent, meticulous work. The doll moved with a speed that defied logic, its tiny hands sorting through the immense piles of seeds with an accuracy that was almost supernatural, separating each grain, each lentil, each tiny poppy seed from the dust and debris, as if guided by an invisible knowing hand. It cleaned the hut from floor to ceiling, banishing every cobweb, polishing every surface, restoring order from the overwhelming chaos with a patient, tireless diligence that continued throughout the long, dark night. Vasilissa, weary but watchful, found herself drifting in and out of a restless sleep, waking periodically to the gentle, rhythmic sounds of the doll's silent, ceaseless labor. A soft rustle, a faint click, the quiet hum of magic at work. It was a testament to the enduring power of a mother's love, a tangible blessing reaching across the boundary of life and death, guiding her daughter through the darkest of trials. As the sky outside began to lighten with the first faint hint of dawn, and the white rider prepared to make his silent passage, the doll completed its final task, and then, without a sound, settled back into its quiet, inanimate state, a silent sentinel of impossible accomplishment. If these glimpses into the old magic and the trials of courage speak to your heart, remember, leave a note in the ledger and drop by when the lanterns glow again. Vasilissa awoke to a hut transformed. Every task flawlessly executed, every pile sorted, every poppy seed separated, an astonishing feat, completed just as the first blush of morning light touched the edges of Baba Yaga's grim domain, fulfilling the promise of a mother's last, most precious gift. Vasilissa's initial dread, though ever present beneath the demand and rhythm of Baba Yaga's chores, slowly began to mingle with a profound, almost hypnotic wonder during her forced tenure within the strangely animate hut. The fire, the ceaseless heart of the dwelling, cast long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eye, and the scent of ancient wood smoke clung to everything, a perpetual reminder of the old magic that permeated this place. It was amidst this constant sensory hum that the true strangeness revealed itself, not with a terrifying roar, but with a quiet, persistent revelation that slowly unfolded with each passing moment. She would be sweeping the packed earth floor, the broom whispering against the dirt, when from the deepest, least lit recess near the great clay oven, a pair of hands would emerge. Not a body, not a form, simply hands. Flesh and bone, seemingly severed, yet moving with a purpose utterly their own. They were rough, strong, with calloused palms and nails stained by earth, and they would tend to the hearth, stoking the embers with a gnarled poker, arranging logs with an almost sentient understanding of fire's breath, always ensuring the warmth endured. Another pair, delicate yet firm, with fingers long and slender, would appear near the spinning wheel, coaxing wool into impossibly fine threads, their movements fluid as water, the hum of the wheel a soft counterpoint to their silent industry, creating textiles that seemed woven with moonlight itself. And then a third, perhaps the most unsettling, withered, ancient, with skin like parchment stretched over prominent bones. These hands would sort the arcane herbs and roots that lay piled in woven baskets, their touch reverent, almost priestly, as they separated the potent from the perilous, muttering, or so it seemed to Vasilissa, in a language as old as the very stones beneath the hut. These were not ghosts in the spectral sense, but rather corporeal extensions, moving with a weighty, undeniable presence, like fragments of some colossal, unseen being, or perhaps, as some tales whisper, manifestations of Baba Yaga's own boundless elemental power, a deep magic so intertwined with the land it needed no physical vessel. They would perform their tasks with an unsettling efficiency, never glancing at Vasilissa, never betraying emotion, simply existing as silent, tireless servants of the witch's will. Vasilissa learned not to stare, not to question, understanding intuitively that this was simply how things were in Baba Yaga's domain. To interrupt their spectral rhythm would be to break some ancient, unspoken pact. It was a chilling testament to the witch's profound connection to the hidden forces of the world, a power that transcended the mundane, speaking of earth goddess roots and forgotten Slavic deities, a silent, ceaseless industry that made the very air around the hearth thrum with an ancient, eerie vitality. The girl, in her quiet observations, began to grasp that Baba Yaga was not merely a witch, but perhaps a living conduit to the primordial energies of a time before recorded history. Her home a nexus where the invisible threads of fate were woven by disembodied hands, and the whispers of old gods were still heard deep within the heart of the forest. In the quiet, smoke-scented air of the crooked hut, a new kind of tension began to coil around Vasilissa, a subtle shift from the physical demands of her chores to the more dangerous arena of the mind. After the spectral hands receded into shadow, leaving the hut sparkling and ordered with an uncanny efficiency, Baba Yaga would turn her gaze upon the girl, a gaze like a hawk's, ancient and piercing, missing nothing. It was not a look of anger precisely, but rather one of profound, unsettling scrutiny, as if the witch were weighing not just the quality of the work, but the very essence of Vasilissa herself. Baba Yaga hunched by the hearth, where embers pulsed like tiny red hearts, would often remark on the swiftness of Vasilissa's tasks, her voice a dry rustle like leaves skittering across frozen ground, yet with an undercurrent that suggested a deeper question lay beneath the surface. "How is it, little one, that you finish so quickly? Are you not weary?" And each time Vasilissa felt a tremor of fear, for she knew that the witch's questions were not idle, that a wrong answer could spell disaster. It was in these moments that her little wooden doll, tucked deep within her apron pocket, would grow warm against her skin, offering a silent inner guidance. The doll was more than mere carved wood. It was a conduit to a gentle, protective wisdom, a whisper of ancestral strength that spoke not in words, but in clear, instinctive understanding. Vasilissa, listening to that quiet counsel, would always answer with the utmost deference and simplicity, a measured politeness that revealed nothing beyond what was necessary. She would speak of diligence, of her desire to please, of the straightforward execution of the task set before her, never boasting, never questioning, always careful to remain within the safe boundaries of expected humility. For the doll, and indeed the atmosphere of the hut itself, had taught her a cardinal rule of this enchanted, perilous place: curiosity was a poisoned chalice. To ask Baba Yaga about the floating hands, about the hut's strange sentience, about the witch's own mysterious nature, these would be transgressions far more grave than any undone chore. Such inquiries, the silent lesson went, would be akin to peering too deeply into the veil, to disturb in the delicate balance of an ancient power that preferred its secrets to remain just that. There was a profound, almost sacred reverence to the witch's domain, a deep-seated magic that did not tolerate impertinence. Vasilissa understood that her very survival depended on her ability to observe, to learn, but never, ever to pry, always keeping her own unspoken questions locked away, lest they invite a fate far worse than mere scolding, a fate hinted at in the silent, knowing glint in Baba Yaga's ancient eyes, a glimmer, perhaps, of the formidable goddess Baba Yaga might once have been, whose power was absolute and brooked no challenge. The girl, then, became a master of respectful silence, her politeness a shield against the witch's formidable scrutiny, her doll a constant comfort and guide in a world where ignorance, for once, was a virtue, and the unspoken held more weight than any uttered word. At last, the arduous days of toil within Baba Yaga's peculiar dwelling drew to a close, a silence falling over the hut that was distinct from its usual simmering quiet, a silence pregnant with expectation. Baba Yaga, observing Vasilissa's unwavering diligence and respectful silence, her tasks completed to an uncanny perfection each day, thanks to the little doll's subtle guidance, seemed to finally reach a decision. Her ancient piercing eyes, which had probed Vasilissa like needles of ice, softened, not into warmth, but into a strange grudging satisfaction, a recognition of an endurance and a spirit that had met her impossible standards. "You have served well, child," her voice rasped, a sound like dry bones clattering, "and you shall have your fire." But what she presented was no simple amber, no common lamp. With a slow, deliberate movement that commanded the very air, Baba Yaga reached into the depths of a dark corner where shadows clustered thickest and seemed to hold their breath, and drew forth an object that made Vasilissa's own breath catch in her throat. It was a skull, a human skull, bleached bone gleaming dully in the hearth's shifting light. But from its hollow eye sockets, instead of emptiness, there burned an intense magical fire. Not the orange flicker of a hearth, nor the pale glow of a moonbeam, but a pure, unearthly luminescence, a living, pulsing flame that seemed to hold the very essence of ancient forests and forgotten stars. This was the fire Vasilissa had been sent to retrieve, a light more potent and terrifying than any she could have imagined. It floated, seemingly weightless, in Baba Yaga's gnarled hand, casting stark, dancing shadows that stretched and warped the familiar shapes of the hut, making the chicken legs beneath them seem to twitch with renewed, unsettling life. The air around it crackled, not with heat, but with a palpable energy, a silent hum of power that vibrated through Vasilissa's very bones. This gift was a thing of profound, paradoxical beauty and horror, a blessing, for it granted her the light she desperately needed to return home, to dispel the darkness her stepmother and stepsisters had cast over her life. Yet it was also a terrible judgment, a grim oracle. The skull, a symbol of death and the ephemeral nature of life, now held within it the very spark of existence, a reminder that even light could spring from the deepest, most shadowed places, carrying with it a potent, untamed magic. It was a stark warning, a burden of truth, and a tool of reckoning, all bound within one bone-white vessel. This was Baba Yaga's way, a remnant perhaps of older, less gentle deities who gave not out of kindness, but out of a fierce adherence to balance and consequence, her gifts always carrying the weight of ancient law. The light was hers to carry, but its unsettling gaze would follow her, a silent burning witness to all that lay ahead on her path back through the dark, enchanted woods. With the burning skull lantern clutched in her trembling hands, Vasilissa finally stepped away from the crooked hut, its chicken legs settling with a creak that echoed like a final ancient pronouncement. The dark, enchanted forest, which had once seemed an endless, menacing labyrinth, now opened before her, illuminated by the skull's unearthly glow. This was no gentle, flickering candlelight, nor the soft gleam of a moonbeam. Instead, the fiery gaze from the empty eye sockets of the bone-white skull cut through the oppressive gloom with an intense, magical brilliance. Each step Vasilissa took was guided by this potent light, revealing the gnarled roots that snaked across her path, the skeletal branches that clawed at the night sky, and the silent, watchful eyes of the ancient trees. The light itself seemed alive, pulsing with an inner fire, and as it pierced the deepest shadows, it felt as though the very darkness recoiled, unable to withstand its powerful ancient luminescence. Yet this wasn't merely a beacon of hope. The skull's fiery gaze was a constant, unsettling presence, a silent companion that seemed to watch not just the path ahead, but Vasilissa herself. It promised warmth and a fierce, unyielding protection from the creatures that might lurk in the forest's depths, the wolves with their hungry eyes, the unseen spirits of the tangled woods. But beneath that promise lay an unspoken, fearsome power, a chilling reminder of its origins within Baba Yaga's domain, a power that could both give and destroy. Vasilissa felt its weight, not just in her hands, but in her spirit, knowing that this was a gift imbued with a kind of wild justice, a primal force that transcended mere human understanding. The doll in her pocket remained warm, a small comfort against the chilling truth held aloft by the skull. The fire was hers, a consequence of her endurance and obedience, a testament to her survival, yet it carried the indelible mark of the old witch's potent magic. It was a tangible link to the profound female power that Baba Yaga represented, a force untamed and ancient, capable of both destruction and creation, of illuminating the darkest paths and judging the deceitful hearts. As Vasilissa moved deeper into the forest, the skull's light pushing back the encroaching shadows, she knew it was more than just a lantern. It was a silent sentinel, a fiery oracle, carrying the unspoken burden of her journey and the fiery wrath that awaited those who had cast her into this magical wilderness. Its burning gaze was a constant, almost sentient awareness, illuminating her way home, but also foretelling a reckoning, a final, undeniable confrontation with the darkness from which she had emerged. Finally, after what felt like an eternity navigating the ancient, watchful paths of the enchanted wood, Vasilissa emerged from the forest's embrace, the burning skull lantern held aloft like a fierce guiding star. The familiar outline of her childhood home, a place once filled with warmth and the gentle echo of her mother's love, now stood before her, a dark and silent silhouette against a burgeoning dawn, its windows like vacant eyes. She found her stepmother and stepsisters exactly as they had been left, huddled together in the stifling gloom of the unlit house, their faces etched with a desperate growing panic from the protracted cold and impenetrable darkness that had settled upon them. They had tried everything, it seemed, to rekindle a flame, rubbing sticks, striking stones, even whispering desperate, forgotten incantations, but all had failed, as if the very essence of fire itself had abandoned them. Yet, the moment Vasilissa crossed the threshold, the air within the house seemed to crackle with a new, potent energy. The magical light streaming from the skull's eye sockets, which had been a steady, protective glow in the forest, now began to pulsate with an intense, almost sentient fury. It no longer merely illuminated, it sought. The fiery gaze, as if recognizing the source of Vasilissa's suffering and the cruelty that had driven her into the witch's arms, turned with an unwavering, terrifying focus upon the two women who had tormented her. It was a gaze of pure, ancient judgment, a manifestation of the elemental forces woven into Baba Yaga's potent gift. The light, once a beacon, now transformed into an instrument of fierce, unyielding justice. It burned brighter, hotter, the spectral flames within the skull's eye sockets flaring with a vengeful intensity, drawing closer to the cowering stepmother and stepsisters. They cried out, shielding their faces, not from physical heat at first, but from the searing, inescapable truth of its stare, the radiant condemnation that exposed their blackened hearts. The air grew thick with a magical heat, a palpable pressure that seemed to strip away their very essence. The intense, unearthly light clung to them, wrapped around them, consuming them, not with the crackling roar of a common blaze, but with a silent, relentless, magical fire that left no scorch marks on the walls, no smoke in the air, only the chilling absence of their presence. They simply vanished, utterly consumed by the fierce, purifying light, dissolving into the very energy from which the flame had sprung, leaving behind only the profound, echoing silence of a deep, irrevocable change. It was a brutal end, perhaps, but one born of the primal justice that resides in the oldest tales, a consequence meted out by a farce beyond human law, a stark reminder of the dangerous power that often accompanies neglected wisdom and feminine strength, a power that, like Baba Yaga herself, acts as both a terrible judge and a strange, wild protector for those deemed worthy. The house, once a prison of shadowed neglect and cruel whispers, was now utterly silent, purified by the fierce, magical fire that had swept through its dark corners. With the complete, if terrifying, departure of her tormentors, Vasilissa found herself standing alone in the quiet aftermath. The burning skull lantern still held in her hand, its gaze now softened, its intense magical light no longer a weapon, but a solemn beacon. The air, though still carrying the faint, clean scent of ancient magic, was no longer heavy with malice. It felt light, expectant, ready for the dawn of a new truth. The skull, having fulfilled its grim but necessary purpose, a justice born of elemental power, began to dim, the fiery glint in its eye sockets slowly receding, as if its task was finally complete, leaving only the memory of where profound malice once dwelled. It had served as both guide and avenger, a crucible through which Vasilissa's own inherent goodness, tested by the depths of human cruelty and the mysteries of the wild, had been forged anew. She, who had endured the dark forest, faced the formidable Baba Yaga, and navigated the unsettling magic of the moving hut, was no longer the timid, downtrodden girl. The journey had left its mark, not in scars, but in a quiet strength, a wisdom that shimmered in her eyes like the fading embers of the skull's fire. With the dawn, the sun's gentle rays began to stream through the windows, chasing away the last vestiges of night and the shadows of a painful past. Vasilissa, though profoundly alone, was truly free, unbound by the chains of an unjust household. The tale often tells of how, in the days that followed, her remarkable spirit and unwavering kindness did not go unnoticed. Her goodness, refined by hardship, shone brightly for all to see, like a rare jewel discovered in the depths of a dark mine. She learned to spin thread of silver, weave cloth of gold, and became renowned for her artistry and gentle heart, skills perhaps subtly honed during her time with Baba Yaga, or inherited from the quiet wisdom of her mother and the protective doll. Eventually, her virtues were recognized by a kind and noble soul, sometimes a wise woman, sometimes a benevolent smar, who saw beyond her simple origins to the true worth of her character. She found not just refuge, but a true home, a life built on respect and genuine affection, far removed from the cold darkness she had once known. The skull, its mission accomplished, was often said to simply dissolve into dust or been buried at the crossroads, its firing magic returning to the earth, a potent symbol of transformation, justice, and the enduring power that lies in purity of heart and courageous spirit. It reminds us that even from the deepest, most shadowed trials, a new beginning can always unfurl, as delicate and strong as a thread of pure silk. Rest well, traveler. The next telling waits on Mondays at 4 p.m. EST and Fridays at 3 p.m. EST. And so, as the final embers of Vasilissa's personal trial cool to soft ash, the lingering warmth of her story invites us to ponder the deeper currents that flow beneath its enchanted surface, the ancient wisdom and enduring truth woven into the very fabric of Slavic folklore. This tale, seemingly a simple narrative of a wronged girl and a fearsome witch, is in truth a vibrant tapestry, rich with echoes of beliefs that predate the printed page, passed down through generations around hearths much like this one. Ethnographers and historians, peering into the mists of the past, often note how such oral traditions serve not only to entertain, but to subtly instruct, acting as cultural vessels for complex ideas about the world and humanity's place within it. At its heart, the story of Baba Yaga and Vasilissa speaks profoundly of cosmic justice, a justice not bound by human laws, but by a wilder, more ancient code where balance must be restored and cruelty inevitably meets a reckoning. Baba Yaga in this telling emerges not merely as a malevolent hag, but a potent archetypal force, a fierce arbiter of fate, perhaps a remnant goddess from a time when the feminine divine was revered in its many untamed forms. She tests, she judges, and she ultimately ensures that a pure spirit like Vasilissa's is not only protected, but ultimately empowered, while malice, in the form of the grasping stepmother and stepsisters, is consumed by the very elemental power it sought to deny. This is the power of the feminine in its rawest, most transformative aspect, a force capable of nurturing life, yet equally capable of severing the threads of injustice with a swift, decisive hand. Vasilissa's journey, guided by the silent, steadfast wisdom of her mother's doll, another subtle symbol of inherited feminine intuition and strength, illustrates the triumph of pure spirit over the corrosive effects of envy and ill will. It suggests that genuine kindness and resilience, even when tested by the darkest trials, possess an inherent magic, an unbreakable core that can navigate the most treacherous paths and emerge not only whole, but profoundly changed and ready for a brighter destiny. The hut on chicken legs, the disembodied hands, the skull lantern with its fiery gaze, each element is a powerful symbol, a brushstroke in a larger narrative that reminds us of the interconnectedness of all things, the unseen forces that shape our lives, and the timeless, unwavering promise that in the grand design of the world, goodness, however beleaguered, will ultimately find its light, and true justice, however strange or fierce, will always prevail. As the last echoes of Vasilissa's journey fade from our minds, a deeper question settles by the hearth's glow. What truly is Baba Yaga, this ancient figure whose name sends a shiver through the deepest forests and whose hut dances on its strange chicken legs? She is not easily defined, this formidable woman of the woods. To some, she is simply a fearsome witch, a devourer of the unwary, her mortar and pestle thrumming with dark intent, a harbinger of dread for lost children. Yet, to others, those who delve into the deep currents of folklore, such as the ethnographers poring over old Slavic texts, she is far more complex. A wise elder whose tests, though harsh, ultimately reveal strength. A formidable gatekeeper to deeper knowledge. A fierce, untamed aspect of the wild feminine. Indeed, some whisper that her roots stretch back further than any recorded history, to a time before the grand cathedrals and the structured pantheons, when the earth herself was revered and powerful feminine deities held sway over life and death, forest and fate. Could she be a remnant goddess then? A primordial force enduring through the ages in the guise of a crone, her power undiminished by the shifting tides of belief. Her hut, perched on its restless chicken legs, ever turning to face the sun or to greet a traveler who proves worthy, is itself a symbol of her unique mutable magic, a living, breathing extension of her will, moving through the impenetrable depths of the enchanted forest. It is a place where boundaries blur, where the mundane meets the magical, and where the very air hums with ancient, potent power. Her strange dwelling, always surrounded by a fence of human bones, topped with burning skulls, speaks to her role as a guardian of the threshold, a judge of those who dare to cross into her domain, and a protector of the wild, untamed spaces. It is these enigmatic qualities, her fearsome power, her inscrutable wisdom, her profound connection to the elemental world, and that wonderfully strange dancing dwelling that ensure Baba Yaga's place will forever be etched into the fabric of Slavic folklore. She remains a compelling figure, her stories continuing to draw us to the edge of our seats, even in the quiet warmth of a tavern by the fire, a testament to the enduring human fascination with the ancient, the mysterious, and the powerfully feminine forces that still echo in the deepest parts of our world. And now, as the last of the glowing wood settles into soft ash within our own hearth, and the lamplight in this Moonlit Tavern casts long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls, we find ourselves back from the deep, enchanted forests of the old tales. The chill of the night might still linger outside, a silent promise of winter's breath. But here, in the comfort and warmth, what has been told of fierce witches, brave girls, and justice spun from fire stands alongside what is known in plain, comforting words. This ancient thread of Baba Yaga and Vasilissa, passed down through countless generations, offers more than just a momentary escape from the wind's howl. It offers a quiet wisdom, a gentle moral for us all as we journey through our own varied forests. It reminds us, perhaps, that life's trials, however daunting, however shrouded in mystery or shadowed by malice, are not insurmountable. Like Vasilissa, when we face our own formidable challenges, it is not always with brute strength, but often with the quiet courage of a pure spirit, with a steadfast heart, and sometimes, just sometimes, with the unexpected guidance of a small, beloved comfort, like a doll held close. It whispers that even in the face of the most formidable powers, whether they be a witch on chicken legs or the everyday cruelties of the world, our own goodness and resilience can be our greatest shield and our most potent weapon. The old tales, you see, are not just for children, nor are they merely warnings. They are quiet lessons, kept in kindness and shared among weary travelers, offering solace and strength to carry forth into whatever awaits beyond the tavern door. They are echoes of a time when the world was wilder, yes, but also more deeply imbued with a sense of cosmic balance, where every act had its consequence and every brave heart found its destined path, sometimes with a little help from the most unlikely of places. So, take with you the memory of the hut that danced, the skull that burned, and the girl who endured. Let it be a spark of warmth against the chill, a quiet thought for your journey ahead, and a gentle reminder that even the darkest nights give way to the dawn. Rest well, traveler. The next telling waits on Mondays at 4 p.m. EST and Fridays at 3 p.m. EST.